You know that we believe in balance here on Chris and Company. Last week, we had our good friend Anthony Broom on to talk a little bit of Michigan football. And now, as we get ever so closer to the opening kickoff, we will have our friend Matt Sheehan back on. Repeat guest, second time he's been on Chris Company, to preview and talk about the future of the Michigan State football program. What does Jonathan Smith's program have in store in year two? Interesting, I would say, intriguing is the word that I use to describe where Michigan State football is at. And that goes so far beyond just the product on the field. I think when you look at kind of where the fan base sits right now, somewhat divided, you have a new athletic director, second-year coach, second-year quarterback. I think there's a lot of things to break down, and I'm really looking forward to talking to Matt. Always been one of my favorites, always been super supportive, even well before the days of Chris and Company. He's absolutely, I think, one of the more important best voices for Michigan State sports, in my opinion. A true fan, but also a guy who isn't afraid to tell it like it is. So looking forward to talking to him. Before we get to that interview, you can follow me on Twitter at Castellani 2014. You can find this podcast in audio form on Apple Podcasts. You can find it on audio form on Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And of course, CastellaniContent.com is being updated every single day. I just saw the movie Weapons, and it was amazing. If you want to watch that review, you can go to CastellaniContent.com and not only find that review, you can find a backlog of every movie that I've reviewed. I think since I created the website. So I think the first movie that I added was Anora, which I saw in either October of 2024. So I think that's a really good backlog for people who want to be interested in my video reviews. That's all there. Same with the Tiger video, same with Michigan football, Michigan basketball, all that stuff. Really excited to continue to kind of add on. I really like having that archive because I know how difficult it can be to kind of go through the internet to try to find that one specific video. I guess there's a fair amount of hubris on my part thinking that people would want to do that for my content, but you got to plan ahead, and that's what we're trying to do. So let's jump right into it here with our interview with Matt Sheehan. I'm really interested in this. We're talking about Michigan State football, and I promise that at some point here in the future, we're going to do a full-on preview, most likely on All Say This, but always want to get a fan's perspective, and of course, he is the host of Locked On Spartans. So let's get to our interview with our boy Matt. Forgot to mention this in the intro, but literally through hell or high water, Matt Sheehan has joined us today. You have literally and figuratively weathered the storm to get here. I take it was the storms that caused what was a internet outage for you a few days ago.
One would think, Chris. That is just like the logical explanation. Metro Detroit, we're getting hit with like F3 tornadoes, but no. It happened during the most beautiful part of the day because there is tree trimming going on by our house, and one of the guys cut directly through the cable that supplies the AT&T customers of the greater Metro Detroit area. So, buddy,
this is I feel like my apologies to anyone listening to this who might be associated with AT&T, but the same thing happened to us last summer. We were out for 2 days. I was doing like Tiger postgame videos outside of our local library because our internet our internet was completely cooked. So unfortunate, but thankfully everything is back up, and we appreciate you.
Great customer service from AT&T, I gotta say. They're not the ones that put the chainsaw through the wire, but
exactly
they did their best to fix it.
That man will remain in witness protection program.
He may
for the foreseeable future. But obviously, appreciate you joining us, man. It's your second time on the program, and the last time we had you on, it was a joint episode with Anthony Broom. And this year, given the way that these programs have gone, the direction that both programs have gone in this year, I wanted to dedicate an entire show to each program. And I want to talk about Michigan State because I think that there is – I can't even necessarily put my finger on it, but I think there's some apprehension amongst the fan base of, where is this going? And there's a lot of reasons for that. And I think that there's a lot of moving parts involved, as is kind of often the case with a major college football program. But I want to start by addressing something that kind of was in the back of my head while watching this team a year ago. And now keep in mind, obviously, year one under Jonathan Smith, but there was nothing I saw from Jonathan Smith's program in year one where I went, wow, red flag, this isn't going to work, this is going to fail.
Yeah.
But as the kids would say, I think this program is kind of lacking in sauce right now. And I think that there's a little, because in the modern age, you can't just be a good program that wins games. You kind of need to be a brand as well. And I think that even though it was a much different time in college football, I think D'Antonio had that brand, where the constant chip on their shoulder, constantly feeling like they were playing for something, embraced the underdog role, beat their rivals. So I ask you right now, in just year two of Jonathan Smith's regime, what should the identity of the Michigan State football program be?
It's going to sound cliche. It's going to sound boring, but just like tough, physical, run-first football. Yep. And that's what you saw over in Corvallis if you were, a sick person like myself that was chasing their days worth of lost bets and just betting on the Beavers and then actually paying off quite considerably, which was nice. So because they did that, because they were able to establish a run-first offense, just like he said that he wanted to do in his introductory press conference here in East Lansing. Now, that did not happen last year because, the offensive line, it wasn't that great. And obviously, that wasn't the only issue with the team last year. But you're looking just for disciplined football, physical football, run first, which is is that enough pizzazz? Is that going to awaken this fan base, which I would almost use the word apathetic at this point?
Yeah.
It's of course, there's always sizzle before season, especially when the team is still undefeated. But, man, was there a lot that jumped off in the middle of last year because there isn't a lot of sauce, sizzle, juice, whatever you want to call it. It's bland, it's methodical, and it's going to be kind of like a slow workup to where Jonathan Smith wants this program, which is kind of not always the case in this day and age of college football.
Yeah, and I think that's where kind of the apprehension comes in, is that it feels at points, and we will definitely talk about the AD hire and how this could change things, but at points almost as if it's stuck in a one gear. And you mentioned obviously the running attack and really the offensive line last year, and in the identity of what Jonathan Smith was trying to establish. And what's interesting, and this was a program that I think 16th in rushing a year ago, but what was strange to me is there was a period of time in the middle of the season where it kind of felt like they were figuring it out a little bit, where they peaked with the Iowa game. And Iowa State, say what you will about Iowa, they're physical. And so to win a game in the trenches against Iowa was very impressive. That we had a rarity last year, which is they won the rushing battle against Michigan, but lost the game. And then after that, we saw a fair amount of regression. So, I mean, this is kind of a overarching question or kind of simplistic question, but in your mind, what happened there? Because it did seem like things were moving in the right direction, and then after that Michigan game, it was like wind taken out of the sails.
I'm not doing a bit right now when I say this, but that Iowa game, which was awesome last year, we celebrated that hard. It was like, hey, a signature win. This is what's going to be remembered. Jonathan Smith, year one.
Yeah.
Now, almost a year removed from it, I'm annoyed at that game. Because where was that team, Chris? I don't know if that's a rhetorical or non-rhetorical question, to be honest. But, they did look great in the run game on both sides of the ball. They bottled up Caleb Johnson for the most part. Yes, he did have that, vintage Johnson 75-yard run. Outside of that, didn't let him do much of anything. As the season went on, I don't know if it was just the offensive line. They had to really carve into their depth early in the season. And just by the end of the year, there was some attrition there. They weren't able, with the guys that they had there, to run the outside zone that they wanted to. That could be a circumstance. Or, hey, maybe Aiden Childs, so turnover heavy to start the season. Maybe he erred too far on the other side of that line of being a playmaker to being way, way, way too cautious with the ball. So that's got to be some of it. And also at the end of the season, they just lost to Rutgers by about 80,000 points. Then you're hearing from Aiden Childs, who, this isn't a verbatim quote, but essentially said, we had some guys quit at the end of the season. Which I don't know how. It seemed to be like things were going somewhat okay, but I'm not going to hold that over Smith's head because that's year one. It's a trial process for a lot of these kids that were held over from a previous staff. And if you're not buying the vibe 3 months in the season, upsetting, but okay, I get it. That just can't happen ever again in his time here. Yeah. So I'm drawing out the answer to this very simple question, but
I appreciate it. And because I think it requires kind of a complicated answer, which is, even though it is kind of a roundabout, I don't know. Just because I remember you had me on, I was on Locked On Spartans last year after the Iowa game, before the Michigan game, and I predicted Michigan State to win the game. I mean, they were in that kind of place after Iowa, and if you would have handed me the box score for that game and told me that Michigan's best running back would be Alex Orji and that that they would win the rushing attack, I'd be like, this is probably going to be a Spartan victory. And it really felt like they just, they never quite recovered from what was a hard fought game, but a loss nonetheless. One thing with Smith that was brought up very early, I mean, even when he was hired, even by the people who appreciated and respected the hire, was the recruiting record. And the fact that, does this guy have the ability to recruit the Midwest? Now, one thing that I've argued is Big Ten country kind of doesn't exist anymore because it extends to California. There's really no but at the same time, and I think a program that we've seen really crumble over the last several years is a program like Wisconsin, which used to just eat up offensive linemen in recruitment. And that's all they would have great running backs, and they would have great O-lines, and they'd be physical up front, and they'd run the ball effectively. And now they kind of try to change their identity, and things are, at least as of now, kind of falling apart with Luke Fickell there. Do you still have the concerns that some people have about Jonathan Smith's ability to recruit in the Midwest, or do you feel like what he's attempting to do in the portal will be enough, at least in the trenches?
Recruiting is a concern, and I don't know if it's because of concern that he's not just focusing so much in the Midwest, because he does have some solid wins. Leo Hannon, in-state quarterback, Samson Gash, in-state wide receiver. That's all fun and well, but he is still attacking not just all 4 time zones, but he's going out to Hawaii for a few of these kids too. So it is truly a global recruiting thing that he's got going. But what it also is, it's a lot of low 3-star kids, right? That's not to say that they don't have some fine kids for 2026. But there's a lot of kids ranked outside the top 800. And I know that this his whole MO, and we rail on this all the time at Locked On Spartans, because he showed this at Oregon State. He goes into battles with kids that he knows he has a good shot of winning with. He's not going to have a kid on campus that has Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, and just a 3% sliver of hope that he commits. No, he's going to go up against guys that also have offers from Cincinnati. Maybe Nebraska's the toughest one out there. Kansas, perhaps. And it turns into that, yes, you're winning most of your battles. You do identify who you like early on, but at the end of the day, with all these kids outside the top 800, you're not going to have a class inside the top 30. And how long are we going to do this for? And I understand the issues. Winning solves everything. You got to get kids in the NFL. You also are in the shadows of Michigan, of Ohio State, of Notre Dame, who's a monster now, of Penn State. It's not easy. But that's also the job here, Jonathan. I mean, you got to turn around. I mean,
it's so I make this comp all the time, but it's similar to an extent of what we talk about with the Tigers about player development, where it's look, in an ideal world, you want your Kevin McGonagalls, your Max Clarks, but it's totally. Sometimes, but the real depth and development comes from, maybe the Troy Meltons of the world, these guys that you don't have, a huge, opinion about, and then they just kind of end up becoming, legitimately solid pieces for you. And I think Smith stabilized things to a certain extent early on and got a big win with the fact that he was able to take Aiden Childs with him. And Childs obviously last year, through it all, I don't know of anybody who believes that his ceiling has lowered necessarily. I think that we saw in many ways what a freshman quarterback would probably look like at Michigan State or really any program, which is a guy with a big arm. Seems like the head on his shoulders is there, but also a lot of erraticness, a lot of turnovers. But I also think a big part of that was the lack of complementary football and the fact that he was often running for his ass, a heavy majority of the time. It is very difficult. We do this thing in football where we like to say, plug a great quarterback into X situation, it'll get fixed. And that's, I mean, we watch Matt Stafford play quarterback here for 13 years. You can, it's you can be generational. I'm not saying Childs is that good, but you got to have weapons, you got to have protection. And so I think that those are kind of the units on the offense that people are most looking at. Who needs to take a bigger step forward in 2025? Is it Aiden Childs or is it the offensive line that's protecting him?
Yeah, it's both. It's a lazy answer, but Childs, I love him. I love the ceiling that he has. We've all seen it, whether it's his legs or his arm. But he's not flawless. He did have some accuracy issues, especially with not even deep balls. Even though that was an issue too. We all know the turnover story, but anyway, it would really help if the 5 guys in front of him can't just have him mauled. Every single time the ball snapped. I don't know. I think he ended the season as the 3rd or 4th most pressured quarterback in the Big Ten last year. According to Pro Football Focus, he was fighting for his life. I remember I looked up the pressure numbers that he got, and I thought it should have been tripled. That's how bad it looked last season. But every single time that he had the ball in his hands from shotgun, within 0.2 seconds, there was a guy off the edge getting into his shoulder pads. And look, one thing I love about Aiden Childs is that he can extend a play. It's also unfortunate how many times we had to see him extend to play last year. So if the 5 guys in front of him can do better, that's almost going to be as important, if not more important, than what Childs himself has to fix.
Yeah, and I also think that there's kind of a residual effect with that stuff where a year ago, he took so many hits and was under pressure so often early in the year that it got to a point where a second into the play, he's rolling out of the pocket. It's almost the expectation. You theoretically kind of hear those footsteps coming, and all of a sudden you're skittish in the pocket. The ability though is obviously still there, and I think that and this is an issue. Going back to Michigan, I mean, just thinking it took 7 years for this with Harbaugh. You know who your quarterback is in year 2, and I do think there is a major importance to that, and they knew that before last season it even started. So I think that is a major step in the right direction. And another big thing, and I think that there's a chance this year, even beyond the Big Ten, this guy becomes a household name, is Nick Marsh, which is obviously shattered Michigan State freshman receiving records a year ago. True freshman. I mean, the Maryland game, he was 17 years old, and
it was great.
Doing it right. Yeah. So there's a real weapon there, not just as a receiver, but I think just as a playmaker and as an athlete. How do you see Nick Marsh's usage in this offense evolving compared to how they used him a year ago? Do you think that there will be a change? Do you think there will be an effort to include him more? How do you think he'll fit into it?
I think he's going to move over the field. They kind of alluded to that. Yes, Nick Marsh, he's great at wideout. You could also see him in the slot a few times too. And this is a guy whose work ethic has just been praised for what he's done this offseason. Yes, as a raw true freshman, hey, throw him on a go route. Yeah, that 6'3" guy that's faster than anyone in Maryland's backfield. That's just gonna be a play that's gonna work. Many a time on that Saturday. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But he's also been working on his flexibility too, which is only going to lengthen his stride, which is only going to make him even faster. So, look, maybe he's going to even fine-tune the route running. I don't think that was a massive issue last year, but that's something as a young receiver you could always get better at. But I think just how much they can move him around the field and how many other guys can complement around him too. Guys like Omari Kelly, transfer out of Middle Tennessee State, that we've been hearing rave reviews about back in the spring, also in fall camp right now. And then if any of these slot receiver transfers are going to hit, Christian McCray, who was the only guy worth writing home about on Kent State last year, or Rodney Bullard, a guy that had a skrillion receiving yards at, of course, everyone knows this, Valdosta State. Everyone watched Valdosta State last year.
Yeah.
But, I mean, he shows at least a baseline of competency in the game of football. If one of those guys can just be an adequate slot receiver, a position that was so important for what Jonathan Smith did at Oregon State, that's only going to make life better for Childs. It's going to make life better for Marsh. It's going to make life better for everyone that wears green and white on the weekends. Chris, we might actually smile for consecutive weeks this season.
For sure. And I mean, it's I would say in many ways, the way that the team performed last year is indicative of how a freshman quarterback would perform, where it's
I would say,
there were these moments where it's man, this is going great. There's a high ceiling, and then there'd be maybe setbacks. And I think, just having those weapons, having that stability in general is at least worth a solid first step, just because we've seen programs go years before they take off just because they can't find a guy who's committed. Those are guys who are committed. I think Marsh, it says a lot about not only him as a player, but I'm sure you had these nightmares as well. Just waiting to get poached by another school, you're probably thinking in the back.
Oh God, yeah! I thought it was inevitable. Yeah, I was like, I remember we were getting emails from Locked On Spartans after that Maryland game, wondering, are we going to keep him next year? Oh my God, are we going to have enough money? How about you just enjoy the season?
Yeah, and the sad truth, and I'm not even trying to fearmonger, but this, it's going to circle back around this year too.
100%.
And it's it's where I will ask about kind of Jay Batt's role in this and the importance of what he could play in this. But that will be a thing this year. I think that of everything that's going on within the Michigan State football program after year one under Jonathan Smith, I think the thing that the fan base viewed as probably the most stable is the hiring of Joe Rossi, and just in general the defense's development as a whole. Not to say that they were incredible or amazing, but I think that the consistent, just fundamental breakdowns in the Tucker era was not indicative of even good Michigan State football, let alone great Michigan State football. And I think that just there was a return, not to greatness, but just kind of to just basically being gap sound at points a year ago, and working with what they had, even if what they had maybe wasn't great. There is more experience and depth at this front seven than there was a year ago, obviously with year two. How good do you think this defense can be, and how far do you feel like they can take them, or do you feel like there's still a lot of holes?
I'm the Michigan State guy, right? Like, I live and breathe this. I talk about it 5 days a week. And, like, the defense, like, like what I'm confident in right now is the linebacker room. I feel really good about them. And that kind of goes hand in hand with Joe Rossi. And it sounds like so basic, like it sounds like a no-dust statement. But he really prioritizes guys that are quick twitch, lengthy, just athletic at linebacker. Again, you would think that is just like a given in football until you've watched Michigan State's linebackers the last few seasons. Like, no, not necessarily. So he's got guys that fit the mold a little bit more right now playing the linebacker position. So I feel good about that right now. The mystery comes up front. The interior, fine, whatever. I'm sure they'll be like right in the middle for Big Ten. Mm-hmm. It is the outsides, which were a problem. And not like, oh, hey, these guys are a problem in a fun way. No, it was a problem for State fans. Like, it drove me to insanity. It drove Michigan State fans to insanity. They went 6 straight games at one point without a single sack.
Wow.
They did good in the transfer portal at other positions, I think, right? Like the secondary. Hey, you know what? The wide receiver was great. Offensive line I thought was good. I'm not entirely convinced they did enough at the pass rush. The best guy they got, redshirt freshman out of Air Force, David Santiago, he was a starter there. Played fine. At Mountain West football, okay, great. You got a guy that was a former 4-star, redshirted last year, didn't play a single snap at Wisconsin. Okay, I got to see it.
Yeah.
To believe it. And then we got a guy from Texas Tech who lost his starting job in the middle of last year for the Red Raiders. And then at a desperation last minute, you got a guy from Georgia State. Chris, ask me if this guy even started at Georgia State.
Did he start at Georgia State, Matt?
Hey, Chris, no, he didn't. And he also was at Jacksonville State the year prior, did not start there either. So, like, out of that bin, you got to find someone that works. And yes, we do have a returning guy. Tyler Gillison didn't play at all last year. He was hurt. But, like, it is just a complete unknown. And it doesn't really seem like there's a guy that you could really talk yourself into being the solid player. Now, would I love to be wrong 3-4 weeks into the season? Yeah, absolutely. Of course I would. I don't want to be miserable. But I don't know. That seems like a position to worry about.
And I get that completely. And I think also just with college sports in general, and it's probably more difficult in basketball, but with the portal being what it is, like, it is the ultimate roll of the dice. There's guys who just find a new environment here and they just thrive for whatever.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker, right? I mean,
well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, who was
poisoned us?
Right? Maybe that was it. That put a hex over the program. Where it's like you're not going to hit another home run in the portal for another 10 years. But no, you are correct about that. Where sometimes, and I think in the case of Walker too, I think sometimes coaches just under-evaluate players. Like, watch that Northwestern game in 21, and you're like, who let this guy walk? No pun intended. It's like this guy's incredible. So no, I do agree with you on that. I think that, like I said, there was a return at points to stability, but the 6 games out of Sac really did, ultimately kind of kill him a year ago.
Yeah, I do want to say one more thing too. There is a defensive end. Now, this is your hand of the dirt defensive end, Jalen Thompson, who for like 5 years as a sophomore last year, played solid as a freshman too. He's going to be key with all this. The guys that I named were on the opposite side of the line, the rush end position or the rush edge, however they classify it. That's also going to be the wild card there. So, but even just having one side of that line being a mystery, it just doesn't sit right with me after a season of just underperforming, to put it very nicely. I think that's the nicest thing I could say, actually.
Yeah, and I think that in a lot of ways, and Mike Valenti talked about this a little bit on the radio the other day, and I agreed with him. Year 2 in the modern age of college football is kind of what year 3 used to be.
I like that.
You can plug so many holes in the portal that the whole wait for your guys to come in here is not as, it doesn't ring as true as it used to, because you can bring your guys in a lot quicker. And so because of that, I don't think there's any Michigan State fan that is saying, playoff or bust, 10 wins or bust. But he brought up a point, I think it's fair, which is there's got to be a signature win in here somewhere. And of course, look, I would say if he goes 8-4 and beats Michigan, his approval rating goes way up. And maybe the answer to this question is Michigan, but of the teams on the schedule that Michigan State will likely be underdogs against, which one do you think they have the highest likelihood of pulling an upset?
I got to go to the end of the schedule here. It's got to be either at Iowa and at Minnesota. I mean, because the Minnesota game and probably the Iowa game too could very well just be first team to 20 wins this game. I mean, Minnesota, I really like their defense a lot this year. You got a really solid running back. Can you hit the road right after, which I think would actually, if I'm not mistaken, be after the Michigan game, which would also be a tough spot for Michigan State. But if you're asking for most likely, it's got to be that. Or Iowa as well. I know that they've had some depth issues with their defense. They're not entirely sold on their secondary, and that late in the season, it's a war of attrition at that point. So can they pop Iowa again? I think so. I think those are the two most likely upsets. But that's also because, I heard about the Valenti thing too. Signature win. Chris, would you consider at Iowa a signature win? Like, is that sexy enough, you think? I really don't know.
It depends on where Iowa is ranked when they play them. Just because
that's fair.
Every year, and I'd say no disrespect, but this is kind of disrespectful. Every year I watch Iowa and they set football back like 45 years to me.
Yes.
It's an unwatchable brand of football. I know they have great linebackers. I know they have good tight ends, but when I watch their offenses, I just say to myself, how does this team win any game? And yet they're consistently top 20. And Kinnick is historically a difficult place to go to. So if they're in the top 20 at that point in the season or top 25 as a 6-point favorite and Michigan State beats them, it depends on how you define signature.
I know. Is it good enough? Right. I know.
It's not Saban beating Ohio State in the horseshoe.
Right.
That, in one of those, I think it was 98, but it's like, it's something. I think obviously like Occam's razor, like simplest solution is just you find a way to beat Michigan at home, which is doable just in the sense, and we brought up a minute ago with portal guys. There's always vulnerability with basically true freshman quarterbacks. I don't care how highly recruited they are. Now, I think this is where Michigan probably benefits from the fact that week 2 you're thrown into the fire. You got to go right to Norman, and so that will probably be Bryce Underwood's baptism by fire. After that, I could see him settling in a bit. Another game that intrigues me a lot with you guys is because I feel like it could be not a loser goes home type of game, but a game where we figure out which direction both these programs are going in is at Nebraska. Just because we're coming up on, they've been in the Big Ten for 14 years or roughly. So we're coming up on 14 years of having to hear about how Nebraska's close. And I feel like this is the first time where I can see, simply because they had a 5-star quarterback basically fall into their lap. This is either 2 or 3 under Matt Rule.
3 coming up. Yeah.
So you're, and that game is at home. I feel like if Michigan State goes there and wins, which is still, all things that, for considering where they've been, it's still a historical place to play. You come off of that, and maybe you have some. Same with the USC game. That's another one in week 3 where again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but if Lincoln Riley is losing to Michigan State at home in year 4, you can almost pack his bag. You can almost hand him the pink slip.
That's a tarmac game. Yeah,
right. Yeah,
even though it's a home game for them, that's a tarmac game. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
To fire him at the tarmac. Yeah,
right. Now, one statistic, and I'm kind of rambling here, but I got to bring this up, is last year, Big Ten teams that had to travel cross country for games were 6-22. So, there will be the inverse of that this year as UCLA is coming to East Lansing, and there will be, the opposite where Michigan State's going to be having to go to USC. I feel like Michigan State football has, even at their best, has thrived at being the program that wins the one game that makes you say, how the fuck did they win that game? And loses the game that makes you say there's no way they should have lost. The year they made the playoff, there were like 3 what the fuck wins and one what the fuck loss. So on the inverse of the question I just asked, what's the game where you see Michigan State likely being favored and potentially being the most vulnerable for an upset?
Is it just week 2 against Boston College? It's still early in the season. You don't know all the answers. Yes, you absolutely should beat Boston College, but okay, what if the pass rush still isn't there? What if the secondary, which is largely made up of transfers from lower levels of football, what if they're not up to snuff, whether it be just communication within their own scheme, or they're just not good, Jimmy's and Joe style, against another Power 4 opponent like Boston College? Let's say on offense, hey, this offensive line still isn't where it needs to be. Aiden Childs is still erratic with the football. I think they win that game. They should win that game. They need to win that game, Chris. But that is a realistic world early on in the season that they can falter and slip against the guy that always has his teams ready in Bill O'Brien. So that is where I'm going to go right now. Yeah,
and they should have beaten them last year. Frankly, if not for some serious mistakes by Childs. They had them. Yeah. I would agree. And the other game that kind of circled, though, I don't think they'll be favored in this, though we'll see, just because last year was so weird, is the Indiana game before Michigan. Just because, and this is, I always point to these games. the game right before the big rivalry game. I mean, I've seen Michigan almost cough that game up a million times. Both in years where they beat Ohio State and years where they lost to Ohio State. Indiana's coming off of this, this remarkable campaign. I think Cignetti's wonderful. I have a hard time believing that they are going to be up to par with where they were a year ago, where they're playing Notre Dame in the playoffs. So I think that could be an emotional kind of turning point in the season. But there's several ones to point to, and I teased it earlier, but I think that this upcoming football season, the Michigan State football program as a whole, things kind of got turned on its head with the hiring of Jay Bett as athletic director and the letting go of Alan Haller, because I think that, you said apathetic was a word. I think stale in a lot of ways in regards to the football program was definitely a word that people were using. I would say, at least what I've seen by voices that I respect, a 95% approval rating for the hire. I mean, it seems like
minimal.
Comes from Georgia Tech. Seems like he's saying all the right things. It's not a guarantee of anything, but from your standpoint, with a program that a lot of people kind of view as somewhat stagnant right now, what is the biggest thing that Jay Batt's going to need to do to help push the football program forward in this modern age of college sports?
Well, first and foremost, he knows, and he said it at his introductory press conference that, hey, sports are great, aren't they? We all have fun. Who doesn't like gymnastics, right?
Right.
Volleyball. Keep on doing you. Wrestling. How fun is that you guys are having over there? Football runs everything on this campus. Of course, I'm saying it much more dramatically than he said, but he did call out football, that a select department thrives when football thrives. That alone, I know we're putting the bar on the floor right now. That alone says that, okay, we're already heading in the right direction here. This guy knows where priorities are, even at a place like Michigan State, where it can be confused. Hey, are you a basketball school? Are you a football school? No, the bottom line at almost every single school lies in football.
Yes.
Okay. Is that improving the game day experience like he did at Georgia Tech? Hey, having some free pregame concerts, nice little tailgating area? Sure. Yeah, whatever. Was it the donations, the money that he drove in? That probably is what headlined the list for him to come to East Lansing. But it's just knowing what has to happen in the athletic department and also embracing the new era of college sports, where sometimes it seems like athletic directors treat it as a burden or a nuisance. He sees this all changing for the better for college sports, and that alone, he's acing the test so far for me. Sounds ridiculous. He's 2 months into his job, but I really like the direction he's going. I think it was a great hire for Michigan State. Now, let's see if it can actually turn into anything on the field. I do think it was interesting that Georgia Tech's recruiting class last year was top 25.
Yeah.
That ain't always a thing for Georgia Tech.
And had a good, should have beaten Georgia.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, that's stupid. Yeah. I mean, it's a sign of an athletic department, or at least a guy who has an idea what he's doing. Because, since the days they were running the triple option, I hadn't thought about Georgia Tech in a long time. And all of a sudden, okay, they're kind of moving in the right direction. I think something similar can happen at Michigan State. And I think the biggest thing, and I can't believe I haven't brought it up yet, but I think really the biggest failure of Alan Haller as an AD as it pertains to the football program is that there was never any laid out concrete plan about what NIL is going to look like for the football program. And I think that there are multiple levels to that, not just the athletic director. I think that
certainly,
I think it probably began in certain ways with Tucker, where I think that Tucker may have created this idea of we're going to spend big. And I think kind of, literally flash the jewelry and flash the cars and kind of created this idea. And then I think, and this is me editorializing, when the moment came where he's like, time to pony up, where's the money? We don't really have a plan. And I think ultimately that kind of has trickled down. I think that while the results in the field are going to speak for themselves, I think the fan base as a whole will feel much less pressure, much less stress if they can just lay out some form of what NIL is going to look like for this program over the next several years. Because it's probably not fair to compare it to the other program in this state, just because
it's unlimited money, right?
Right, and they have the guy who owns the Dolphins, and they have Tom Brady or Woodson or my former.
That helps.
Any one of these people who can step up and throw money at it. It is different at Michigan State, but they have more than enough backing and a good enough alumni base to be able to build this into, from a monetary standpoint, a top 25 program. The other thing about the Jay Batt hire that I find very interesting is that I think it immediately made Jonathan Smith's seat a little bit hotter. And that's not to say that Jay Batt has a negative opinion of Jonathan Smith or that he feels like he's going to do a poor job. But I just remember, I'll make another Tigers analogy, when Scott Harris was brought in, and I even, when I talked to AJ, he said this, he's like, I was an inherited manager. Like, I didn't know if he was just going to get rid of everybody. And I think that when you take over, whether it's a president of baseball ops, AD, what have you, you kind of assess what you have and you say, okay, this is what's working. We're going to keep it. This is what's not working and we're going to get rid of it. In the case of the Tigers, everyone except for Hinch and Fetter was gone. I mean, they just revamped the entire thing. And so you have Jay Bett, who enters the program with a lot of new ideas, and it seems like kind of a fresh perspective on where he wants the program to go. But you have a coach that's brought over from a previous regime that Jay Bett did not hire. In your mind, do you feel like that puts a little bit more pressure on Jonathan Smith in the sense that he has to prove something to an AD that didn't hire him, or do you feel like that's a little bit overblown?
I think so, and the conversation always has to start with, like, what would the numbers look like? Should Jonathan Smith, let's say, go 4-8, recruiting falls off a cliff, like things are just looking horrendous in year 2. For Michigan State to get rid of him would be in the ballpark of like $32 or $33 million, which would be the second highest buyout in college football history. Wow. Still pales in comparison to Jimbo Fisher's $76 million buyout, but like, still, it would be first place by far in the Big Ten. I think right now Scott Frost has that record at $15 million, I want to say.
What a shameful title to have. Well, I guess I don't. Maybe
it's like great and not great, right?
Maybe not. If you're Scott Frost, I mean, Scott, he doesn't have to coach another game. I know he went back to UCF, but yeah, I guess in a way, somebody's got to be on top of that. But no, you're correct.
So it's got to start there. So you'd have to pony up what would be the second highest buyout of all time, but also like, Jay Bett's not dumb. Like, he knows how important football is. He knows how important it is to be good at football with this ever-changing landscape. Michigan State is already a few steps behind. You can't be laps behind everyone. You can't have apathy fall even deeper. Who's going to be sold into year 3 of Jonathan Smith if this is a bad season? If recruiting falls off a cliff? Like, I don't know. It would not be a real fun time here in East Lansing. So, look, hey, can he show his fundraising chops and raise that much money to let a guy go and then raise even more money to bring in a heavy hitter? It'd be asking a lot. I think it'd be a lot of horrible things that would have to happen for it to go down like this. But like, yeah, it's not nothing that a select director gets hired while the football team's struggling, whether that's the head coach's problem or not. I don't know. And I thought it was interesting too that, like, I got myself in trouble maybe with this, but Jay Bett, when in the introductory press conference, said something along the lines of like, we're going to make sure there's no reason for football to fail here, which is like a good quote. But like, is he also kind of telegraphing like, hey, Jonathan, we're going to set things up for you. Don't drive it further off a cliff than you already, well, not he already has, but this program has already done. So I don't know. I don't think it was salacious, but like 10% of me was like, is he sending a message there? I don't know.
Yeah,
so
there's a little bit of subtext there. I mean, I think that there is just, in general, there's natural uncertainty when you have a relationship that just hasn't been established yet.
Yeah,
I mean,
right, totally.
You have an AD and a coach that don't know each other, and one is kind of overseeing or, not has control, but, needs to be aware of what the other guy's doing. And so, it definitely creates an interesting dynamic with Smith. I think I generally agree with you, which is pending disaster, and disaster can mean a lot of different things, from poor results in the field to whatever, lack of institutional control, whatever. I think that at the very least he's going to be allowed year 3.
I think so,
and I think at that point, assuming that there isn't some huge shift, and you're talking about not just year 3 with Smith, but likely year 3 with Childs and year 3 with Marsh and these guys that kind of came in together, that's kind of the moment where it's like, nut up or shut up. And that doesn't mean, I think, compete for the Big Ten, make the playoff. But I think it's where Michigan State fans have gotten very frustrated is we want to see a direction. We want to see a ceiling. We want to see a world in which every few years we are competing for the playoff. And I think that over the last several years, they haven't necessarily seen that. But that does lead me to my next question about Jonathan Smith, which is, I think that at this point with Michigan State and the fact that there's a million teams in the Big Ten, it's harder to win your conference than it ever has been. It's a completely different world, and now you have this 12-team playoff. It's kind of a tough question because there's a lot of things that need to happen, and who knows what their records will be prior to this. But roughly by what year do you feel like Jonathan Smith would need to make the playoff in order for his job to be secure?
I don't look. I mean,
is there a year?
Yeah, I think there has to be, right? Like, you didn't pull him over from Oregon State just for no reason, right? Like, you're not giving, guys like Aiden Childs, Nick Marsh. Like, I know our NIL isn't up with the Michigans or Ohio States, but like, those guys aren't here for free either. Like, we are competitive, maybe B tier, I would say, but nevertheless, you're not shelling out all that money and resources just to never have the college football playoff. So there has to be a year attached to it. And let's say, we just talked about Jonathan Smith being on the hot seat. Let's go the opposite way. Let's go like 8-4, for example, or like 7-5. You get some really nice wins, and then you get Childs back. You get Nick Marsh back, which, by the way, Aiden Childs, Nick Marsh, already the highest receiving duo in the Big Ten from last year. That's how much turnover there is in college football. I think Michigan State is one of, I think it's 2 or 3 Big Ten teams to return their offensive, defensive coordinator, head coach, and quarterback from last year.
Wow.
Like, this just doesn't happen. If you could do that in year 3, where the schedule, it's not always a picnic, like it never will be, but it softens from this year, I think there would have to be college football playoff chatter if they show enough good on the field this year, hold over some key players in the offseason, and go into next year. I think it can be 2026. I mean, it's hard. I mean, certainly. I know this is rich coming from a guy that hasn't seen his team in a bowl game in 3 years, but like I can see the vision with the ceilings that these guys have and what continuity does in the world of college football too.
Indiana and SMU made the playoff last year. So like
Totally
I can't really begrudge any fan who's like, why not us in 2? I mean, there's legitimate hype about Illinois this season being that this year's Indiana. And I get it. Bielema has done a wonderful job. Like, who could have seen that 2-3 years ago? So I can't necessarily knock it. I think that the biggest thing, and where Michigan State football has often gotten into trouble, we saw it a little bit last year, is just like, you got to avoid those bottoming out years. It's I think D'Antonio, for the most part, prior to 16, even when they weren't winning Big Ten titles, which they were, consistently good, they're always competitive. And year in and year out, you felt like they had a chance against Michigan. You felt like they had a chance against some of the major opponents. I think that where Michigan State falls apart sometimes, and I think you saw it with D'Antonio following 16, and I think you definitely saw it with Tucker, is like, if you have that crash and burn 4-8, 3-9 season, man, it just takes all the air out of the balloon, and you got to reset from the beginning. And while they did go 10-3 in 17, I don't think D'Antonio ever fully recovered from the bottoming out that was 16. They were never the same program after that. I think the main goal, obviously, playoff and Big Ten title, is just to make sure that there's a competitive balance and a competitive product year in and year out that you feel like is competing for something. Last question here, though. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground, man. I appreciate it. I'm not allowing you can't say like I would make it so that they win every game. But there's obviously been a lot of question marks that have been thrown around this program, and a lot of, I think, legitimate questions that have been raised about the direction the program's headed in your mind. And it could be recruiting, it could be NIL, it could be changes, getting rid of the troughs inside Spartan Stadium.
No, I like those. They add character. They add character.
That would be one of those things that I obviously, like, I root for a different team, but that would be one of those things that I would absolutely root for. Like, you have no idea the number of people who tweeted me about the whale mural outside of Comerica Park. People are more amped about that than they are about like re-signing Scooball. Like, so it's one of those things where it's like, even if it's literally shit, it's our shit, and like we're gonna enjoy it. Like, you can't take that from us. So the troughs can stay. But if you could change one thing currently about the Michigan State football program going forward, what would it be?
Oh my God! Oh, that is such a hard question. I'm gonna end up like DMing you an hour after this change.
No, that's fine. I'll have Austin add a little note in at the end if you got it.
I want the Lamborghinis back on the field. I actually want. It is going to go in the world of recruiting, and like it does come with some more pizzazz. Just like everyone wants to dog Mel Tucker, and like very understandably so. Very tremendously easy punchline. And one of those punchlines was, hey, he had this like 64-page brand booklet for himself. What kind of a loser does that? Well, look, maybe it's just because I'm from the world of marketing too, but like, I don't think that's the craziest thing in the world, especially at a place like Michigan State that had a struggling brand identity moving forward. Now, am I saying that you got to bring, the chains, the dogs, the goats, the Lambos back in the field? No. And I understand that winning cures everything. Getting guys in the NFL will also help too. But like, you just need a jolt of energy outside the program. I get that. Hey, do it old school Mark D'Antonio style. You just deal with yourself in silence and you prove everyone on the field. But like, no, like we need some energy outside the program too. And I think that maybe that's just like such a non-answer, but just in the world of recruiting, if I could just have a magic lamp, it would just be to get a top 25 class. I won't ask the genie for too much here.
Yeah.
Just get us like 4 stars plural on campus. Like that would be nice. So
yeah,
that's where I'm going to go, because the lifeblood of college football, even in this age of transfer portal and everything, is still recruiting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I also think this is where, and I don't know if Michigan State's heading in this direction, this thing that programs are doing of having a general manager, I think is a huge way.
New. Yeah.
It's new, but I think that will help. Like, Stanford is, people like they hand out like, wine and cheese at their tailgates. Like it's not exactly
right.
like it's not exactly some top brand like when you think of college football. But Andrew Luck is a legend. He's a legend there. He's a super smart guy. He becomes kind of, as their general manager, in a lot of ways the overseer in the face of that program, as they can allow that the head coach kind of do his thing and bring in the guys that he wants. I think Michigan State could really use that, because there is, especially going back to the D'Antonio era, a really deep, I would even say fun group of alumni that played there, that know the university really well, that probably know the program so much better than, and this is not meant to be a knock on him, but just better than Smith ever did. I think that is an important thing, because like I think that when you look at a program like LSU, tons of talent, but I think a former coworker of mine once said Brian Kelly is the least cool coach in America who coaches at the coolest university. And so
that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, it's like how can that guy, maybe that guy doesn't bring in the recruits, but the endless number of LSU alumni who are going out and playing in the NFL or who are part of the program, I think that could be something that's associated with Michigan State, depending on who they go out and get.
That did happen in year 1. I'm not sure if it carried on to year 2 of this recruiting cycle, but Smith actually did take a backseat to TJ Duckett.
Good point.
He was the guy that, spoke to all the recruits when it was like, I think it was like, whether it was the welcome or the exit speech for any of these big official visit weekends. So he has done something to that effect. So which I applaud him for. It takes a lot to take a backseat, especially for a program that you run. But yeah, just like more of that would be great. Keep on bringing these guys in from those golden years from a decade ago because there's a lot of passion there, and they probably got some good ideas. So another idea too, way back in the day, way before I think even we were born, they used to bring out a chariot with a white horse pulling it with Sparty in the back before every game. I would also like to see that.
That's make the game day experience great again. No, for sure, man. I think especially, it goes back to, what D'Antonio kind of set up, which is the whole idea of when he arrived there, he's like, the history is what we're going to make. Like, there's not a whole lot for us to go off of right now, but now it's like, and time flies, man. Holy shit, time flies. But like, it is officially the past. We're talking over a decade of,
the D'Antonio. It pains me to say too, right?
But it's that's the one bad thing about doing the interview show is I'll talk to these people and be like, "Oh yeah, I remember when I was in high school or like elementary school watching you," and it's like, wait, that was like 2 weeks ago, and so now I got to explain this. That's the scary part. What is not scary, my friend, is the work you do, man. Honestly, whenever you are the first. I have a family and friends that are full of Michigan State fandom, and you are absolutely one of the first people I think about after every Michigan State sporting event.
Appreciate that, man.
You've been incredibly.
How sad I am. Yeah, that's right.
Well, no, hey.
Basketball season was good though.
I do 162 Tiger videos. Like I can't call anybody sad. Okay, like I've been up for West Coast. I've been up for West Coast trips where Jordy Mercer's batting cleanup. Like the last thing I can do is point out anybody else's lifestyle for how they take in and consume their
fair.
So the best of luck, man. We will have you on again in the future, but I appreciate you coming on here and previewing the season, man.
Oh, you're the best, Chris. This is a blast. I could do this all day long, but I'm sure that would bore a lot of people out eventually. But can't thank you enough, man.
Of course, appreciate it. Always a fun time, and I really think that I've seen Michigan State football in so many different places in my lifetime, even more so than Michigan, because I've seen Michigan State football be third-tier non-competitive. I've seen them be on the precipice. I've seen them at the precipice. I mean, I've seen them on the mountaintop, winning the Rose Bowl, making it to the college football playoff, and now I find them in a place where they're at very much a crossroads. And I'll talk more about it when I get into my previews, but I think that there is a hopefulness, but also a certain amount of apprehensiveness amongst the fan base about what this program can be. And I also think that there's I keep using words with ness at the end of them, but a divisiveness in the sense of where certain fans want this program to be and where certain fans think this program actually is. So I think that's an interesting dichotomy. Appreciated him coming on and breaking it all down for us. You can follow him, and we'll link to his podcast and his socials in the description for this video. And if you're watching it on YouTube, you can hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and see all the links down in the description. Follow me on Twitter at Castellani2014. We are available in audio form on Apple Podcasts. We are available in audio form on Spotify. And, of course, CastellaniContent.com, being updated every day with post-game videos, movie reviews, I'll Say This episodes, Chris and Company episodes. Look, it ain't for lack of effort. Last thing I'll say to anyone who's either listening to this or watching this, I'll leave out the details. I'll just say that we are really at a point where we would love to have sponsors. And I've been reaching out, and Austin's been reaching out, and we've been trying to do it. But I just, we've gotten to a point where if you get a sponsorship with us across all of our platforms, you are going to be reaching roughly around 80,000 people with the content that we have, the following that we have on all platforms. If you saw the Orange Insoles ad, that was very successful for us. So we're willing to put in the effort and willing to work with people, especially if you are a Michigan or Detroit based business. It's very important that we support our own here. So that's just something I wanted to throw out there. Thank you again to Matt Sheehan. We will be back with another episode next week. We will be back with another I'll Say This as well. And I will talk to you real soon. The college football train is rolling down the track, and it's about to arrive. See you in a bit. Have a great rest of your day. Peace and happiness.